So hello there and welcome to another album review of The Children on a Couch. I'm your host Hector, and tonight we're talking about the brand new Insomnium album called Anno 1696 that came out last Friday. So it took me a little bit to go ahead and talk about this album because first of all, there's so much music. And to me, Insomnium is a band that you have to take your time with it and really listen to it because since 2016 they had some like conceptual albums like when they did Winter's Gate, and I think it's a band that you have to take your time with it. And to me, when you take your time with Insomnium, like you can dip the layer, especially in their latest albums, because they've gone more experimental, telling more stories. They had I think, a short EP that came out last year, which was 3 songs, and it was great. So they're continuing that with this album, and I'm gonna show the full album cover of this. So this is the full album cover for Anno 1696, and as you can see, there's a lot of Finnish folk on this album stories. And something to me that really makes this stand out is that they have these stories and they're based on reality, and nothing is scarier than reality. When you hear tracks about things that happen in history, especially in that time of 1696 and those times, it's really fucked up. There's lots of shit happened on those times, and there were people being persecuted by religious belief, and if you didn't agree with them, you were witches, and all of that is explored in this album, but from the point of view of the history of Finland. So they've done that in the past, and I think they do it very well on this album. And something that I liked about this album is that it's not super long affair. It's 50 minutes, 8 tracks, and sometimes with Insomnium, sometimes they give you just too much, and sometimes a little bit less is better. Like, for example, when they did Winter's Gate, that was like a 40-minute album, and it followed a story, and I thought it was great. The last album, I thought it was good, but I think it was a little bit too long, and maybe some things could have been cut. But on this one, they trimmed the fat a little bit, and they give us a very cohesive album. And of the 8 tracks, there's 2 tracks that have guest vocalists. Like, for example, on White Christ, they have Sakistolis from Rotting Christ, and that's just a great haunting track. And I think Sakistolis, his vocals really blend well with what Insomnium is doing in this song. I really like when Insomnium gets very melodic. To me, when they get very melodic, it's when I think they find that sweet spot that I think enriches the songs more. Yes, they can sing harsher vocals, but I think the mellow death is their strong suit. Like, if Insomnium doesn't do mellow death, then it's not Insomnium. And I think they're one of the best bands to do this right now. And I think they're a little bit underrated. When you think of melodic death metal, there's other bands that have gotten more praise, like, for example, In Flames, to name a band. But something that Insomnium has done pretty well is that they have stayed very consistent throughout their whole career. And Anno 1696 is not an exception. It's a dark record. Like, for example, it starts with 1696, and it's a long track, like a 7-minute track. And the atmosphere it builds, you feel like the dread of what's happening in that time. Godforsaken has a female vocalist, Johanna Kurkela, that lends her vocals, and I love how those female vocals enrich the song. I think that's one of the highlights of the album for me. And the album starts super strong with these 3 tracks. Then they had a lead single, Lillian, and that's more Insomnium by the numbers. It's more mellow death. You got those really melodic guitars that like those clean sounding guitars that are really like in tune with the band, and it sounds more like something that they have done in the past. So I think this is a great track for a bridge for the rest of the album because it's not as dark, it's more accessible, but it's still great. The same with Starless Path, I thought that it had also a lot of that Insomnium sound in the guitar that really blends well after Lillian. Uh, Other songs like The Witch Hunter, that's a great song, and it's all about what I was talking about before about people being killed because they're witches. And that's the scariest part of all. When you read that this is about the Torsaker witch trials that were a horrible source of nightmarish inspiration. Like 70 women beheaded in a small Swedish parish. Like it can get more darkened than that. And if that wasn't enough, there's very dark tales of cannibalism and child murder from the years of the Great Famine that happened. And Insomnium's plore on this album as well. They were also inspired by Aino Kala's 1928 novel, Suden Morsian. And this is a novel from Finland, and it's very dark and tragic tone. And it really blends with what they're trying to do here with the album. I think when they write these epic tracks that are based on history, I think the sky's the limit. You know, like you can write and fantasy and write about dragons and other stuff, but when you're writing about stuff that happens in real life, I think that to me makes them stand out. And the way that they've done it now for a few albums is it's great. You know, the storytelling, the way the music sounds, like you feel the anguish. Or on the Witch Hunter, which is another of the singles that they use. That's a great track, great guitars on it, and I like the vocals and obviously the story behind it. The only song that I thought was kind of a filler was the Unrest, which is like a 3.5, 4 minute, like more slow track, and it's more of a cleansing palette for the Rapids that ends the album. And that track has like shifts in mood, shifts in tone, in sound. It goes like faster, then slower, then more melodic. But I think the Unrest was just like a way to like, because this is a very intense album. It was like a way to like put some breaks and prepare you for the finishing. So my final thoughts on Insomnium and this album, Anno 1696, is that this is a band that keeps improving. I think the storytelling that the band is doing is top notch, and just the melodic depth. It's just great. I love how they do the clean vocals with the harsher vocals, and how melody is always at the forefront. And to me, that makes it an amazing album. So you shouldn't sleep on this album. And also, it's interesting to read the inspirations behind this album, because I think it makes it more interesting, at least for me. And I enjoyed the songs more when I read what they were about. So what did you think of Insomnium's Anno 1696? Were you impressed by this album? What are your favorite tracks? And how would you rank this in Insomnium's discography? So if you like the videos that I'm putting out, do not forget to give me a like. And please don't forget to subscribe. That helps me. I want to get to 1K. And until next time, people, this is Hector, the Shield Dude in a Couch. And I'll see you right here on the couch. Thank you and good night.